086802 or order online at buyinstaseal.com.
The left and the right entirely agree effectively on one issue. The only problem is people from both parties in the Senate, for some reason, don't. Kamala Harris is back, baby, and she is bringing the heat politically, and I couldn't be more excited about that. The California quote-unquote high-speed rail, and get ICE out of foreign countries where they're not doing immigration stuff, so says the people at the Olympics. So much to get to. My name is Jobob. Thanks so much for tuning in. The show starts right now. You would think that here in this country, in this republic democracy, that if the overwhelming majority of people agree on one specific issue, well, that issue would kind of take precedent in the Senate and the House of Representatives, and people would vote on it and it would be approved because the people agree. Not exactly the case. We'll get into the SAVE Act up here up front now. It's a new push by conservatives to do a very thoroughly reasonable thing. But before we get to that, I got to mention TPT at TPUSA.com is the email address if you'd like to send along your thoughts, comments, concerns, and criticisms, as I'm sure there will be many, not necessarily of this show, but of some of the folks that are holding up what the American people want, even people allegedly on our team, not doing the will of the American people, including both sides of the political spectrum. TPT at TPUSA.com, or leave a comment wherever it is that you happen to be watching. And if that comment is sarcastic, snarky, but also just cruel, downright mean and bigoted, chances are it'll fit in right here with exactly what I'm doing, and we'll read it in our mailbag segment of the show in the final segment of the day. Also, got to mention there's this event happening on Sunday, and that is the Turning Point halftime show. The All-American halftime show is taking place, featuring Kid Rock, just a bunch of people. I can't say much, but I think there might be a little bit more than you might believe. And now, there's several things going on that day. There's things going on in foreign languages, and then things going on in English. You're going to want to watch the thing going on in English, just so you know. The All-American Halftime Show will be in English. Subtitles not required. Unless, of course, you don't speak English, in which case, learn English. You're in the United States of America. It's kind of a priority, should be a priority of yours. So tune into the All-American Halftime Show literally wherever you watch anything. It'll be streaming and live here on Real America's Voice, Daily Wire Plus, all of the Turning Point, Rumble, X, YouTube, everywhere. The All-American Halftime Show this Sunday. You're not going to want to miss it, and you'll actually understand what's going on there. So I want to start off with a short anecdote. The other day, as is many days in my household, if you're not familiar, I have a 2.5-year-old. She's actually very, very good at speaking. And because of that, she's able to, or at least she thinks, manipulate the heads of households. Well, the head of the household, me and my wife, basically. You can parse who's actually the head of the household is me. But, we are the bosses of the household. And sometimes, in her sly, sneaky toddler way, she'll come up to me if I'm alone in a room without her mother and say, "Mommy said I could have a pouch." She'll have a pouch and she'll offer it to me. Now, because I am a parent that doesn't necessarily entirely accept the whims of a toddler, I think to myself, did Mommy actually say that you get to have a pouch? Or are you just saying that to get me to open it for you? In reality, I generally always, unless, I decide otherwise, will ask my wife, hey, did you say that she could have this pouch? Or is she just making it up? What I'm getting at here is, if my toddler says something to me, I, as a parent, want to verify that what she's saying is true. And that's really the premise of this. Verification is very, very important, not only in your household, but on a broader, more national scale. What you want to do, especially in the context of elections, is verify that the person voting in said elections has the right and eligibility to vote in that election. What are one of the ways you do that? Well, you could, and this is going to sound crazy, verify that they have a valid identification source with a picture that matches the person on the voter registration rolls. It would be crazy to just take the word of, in this case, in my anecdote's case, a toddler, or just, a random person that says, I can vote here. Okay, well, we're going to have to verify that and see if that's true. Now, the overwhelming majority of Americans agree with that. We'll get to the polling in just a quick second. But even the hardcore libs, one Joe Scarborough, who hosts a show on PMS Now. I always get those names mixed up. Was saying so just a couple years ago when the state of California, who we cover a lot here and we'll talk about later on in the show, did something insanely stupid, leading to what would be the lack of verification of people who can vote in this country. This is an entirely separate topic, but I wanted to set this up here with this clip that's now resurfacing around the internet of Joe Scarborough talking about how disastrous it would be if the state of California gave a bunch of illegals driver's licenses. Cut 6.
Tonight on Scarborough Country, a bill approved by the state of California giving illegal immigrants driver's licenses. Is this a desperate move by Democrats to keep Gray Davis in office at the expense of national security? Tonight, we look at the left coast's most endangered politician, Governor Gray Davis, and his Democratic Party's latest attempts to show illegal aliens that crime pays. The Democratic legislature has actually passed a bill out of committee that allows illegal immigrants to get a California's driver's license. That's right. And by giving these criminals the most accepted form of identification in America, the California Democrats buy votes for themselves, and it looks like, to me at least, that political gamemanship is trumping national security, as illegal immigrants are given a free pass.
Now, obviously, national security is a big talking point here on the right. There's a couple things interesting about this. One is that how in the world is that Joe Scarborough? Remember, Joe Scarborough was hired like as a conservative on MS Now. And somehow, who knows what happened to that guy? But that's not the point we're trying to make here. The point we're trying to make here is that if you have to show an ID to vote in this country, that becomes a problem if you're giving illegals IDs. And that's not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem, as you well know, is that you don't have to show an ID to vote in elections, which is crazy. Thankfully, there are some people in the federal government, in our elected offices, that think, hey, maybe we should verify whether or not the people voting have the ability to vote, the right, the eligibility to vote. And a couple years ago, the SAVE Act was introduced. The Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act was introduced, and its main mission was to amend the National Voting Registration Act of 1993. States would be prohibited from accepting or possessing voter registration applications for federal elections without the proof of the person voting, often in person. We don't even need to get into the online registration, the motor voter thing, the vote from home, the mail-in ballots, all that sort of stuff. The problem is when the SAVE Act was introduced, both recently and also in the past, the critics said that, well, it creates an unnecessary barrier. They say millions of people who are eligible, lack the access to be able to get an ID. Famously, we've played clips on this show of Governor Hochul in New York, but many on the left side that say, well, black people are just too darn stupid to get an ID, and minorities are just they can't. How could they possibly get an ID in order to vote? That is the arguments against the SAVE Act. Now, the House in 2024 passed the SAVE Act, but it stalled in the Senate. It also passed in April of 2025, again, stalled in the Senate. It's currently still in the Senate, and unfortunately, there are several senators, including some guys we might actually agree with, but more specifically, Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer, a bunch of the libs who they need some to get that past that filibuster threshold, are saying, no, we shouldn't have voter ID in this country. Senator Schumer recently went on MS Now, to talk about why he doesn't support having to show an ID, and unfortunately, as libs often do, he's fallen into the same racist tropes. Here's Senator Schumer, cut 7.
Jess, there's a new Pew Research poll that 95% of Republicans, but also 71% of Democrats like this idea. So why do you not?
It's Jim Crow 2.0, and I called it Jim Crow 2.0, and the right wing went nuts all over the internet. That's because they know it's true. What they're trying to do here is the same thing that was done in the South for decades to prevent people of color from voting. This is vicious and nasty, and I said to our Republican colleagues, it will not pass the Senate. You will not get a single Democratic vote in the Senate. We're not reviving Jim Crow all over the country.
Yes, it is Jim Crow, and the reason he doubles down on that is because it's true. What did he say? It's vicious and nasty. Wow. If showing an ID to vote is vicious and nasty, what does it say about all of the other things that you have to show an ID for? I fly quite frequently, and next time I'm at TSA and they ask, excuse me, sir, can I see your ID to make sure that you're not an Islamic terrorist and going to blow up this plane? I should say, no, that's a vicious and nasty practice. When I go to this, I don't buy anything that I need an ID with at the store. But when you do any of the things that you need an ID for, is that also vicious and nasty? Now, Senator Schumer himself, while walking the halls of Congress, was posed that question, I believe, by a reporter from Lindell TV. And this is how that interaction went. This is the senator's answers as to whether or not it is vicious and nasty to have to show an ID to also board a plane, to drive a car, to do many of the other, to buy alcohol, to buy a firearm, all of the other things that you need an ID for. Is that also vicious and nasty? I believe this is cut 8.
Senator Schumer, you recently called the SAVE Act Jim Crow. Can you explain how it's Jim Crow to require an ID to vote in elections, to drive a car, to purchase alcohol, go to the DMV? Any comment on that?
Yeah, his commentary was none. That video played a little bit longer, and he just kind of continued walking. Didn't actually offer any advice. I probably should have left that in there, which just shows him not answering, but you can take my word for it. He did not say anything to the effect that, no, buying alcohol or driving a car or flying on a plane also is vicious and nasty Jim Crow on 2.0. The bottom line is the idea that having to show a license to or a valid ID to vote is racist is in fact racist in and of itself, because what you're saying effectively is black people are too dumb to get an ID. Minorities are too dumb to get an ID, and therefore we shouldn't have to require it when voting in our elections. Now, this doesn't even touch the state level stuff. This is specifically for federal elections in which the federal government should have jurisdiction, and yet nothing is happening. The recent polling that came out is from Pew Research Center in 2025. An incredible 83% of Americans favor requiring all voters to show a government-issued ID. Now, you may be thinking, well, that poll could be inflated. Gallup did a poll the year prior. In 2024, they also showed, interesting that it's exactly the same number, that 83% of people support showing a voter ID in order to register to vote for the first time to prove their citizenship. So in other words, everybody agrees. Now, that's just those evil conservatives that think that you have to show an ID. Well, actually, 71% of libs think that you should also show an ID, as pointed out by the host there on PMS Now. 71% of libs agree with 83% of the country. I think it's like 95% of conservatives think that this is true because, duh, like, of course you should have to show an ID. But the libs fall back constantly on the racist idea that black people are too stupid to get an ID. Now, to combat that argument, even though I don't think it's necessary, I think it's ridiculous to have that thought in your head, but just for the sake of combating that, I was able to pull footage of an actual black using an actual ID to vote in elections. This is proof that black people are smart enough to use an ID to vote. Cut 9.
He needs an ID.
Oh, you bet you're right. Hold on. I got my driver's license. Here you go.
There you have it, folks. there is a black man who does in fact have an ID, thwarting the idea that libs continually push in their racist hearts that black people are in fact too stupid to have an ID. Now, this particular black man might have been too stupid to run the country, but that's a different conversation for a different time and has nothing to do with whether or not he should have had an ID to vote. The bottom line here is that of the things that Americans agree on, this is one of the very, very few. You can't get 83% of people to agree on what toppings to put on a pizza, let alone very difficult policy. Yet this is one that we all agree on. 83% of people agreeing might as well be, that's as close to a mandate as you're going to get. There are some Americans who, I don't know, if we use the analogy of buying a pizza, there are probably 30% of Americans who have the abominable opinion of putting pineapple on pizza. And yes, I do believe those people should be jailed for their crimes, but you know, I'm not an all-powerful dictator. What I'm saying here is that you can't get Americans to agree on the most simplest, most fundamental things, and yet this is so simple and so fundamental that 8 in 10 people agree. 4 out of 5 Americans agree you should have to have an ID to vote. Now, I mentioned a little bit, there are people on our side of the political aisle that also are not in favor of this, and hopefully we can deal with that by way of primaries or convincing them otherwise. But at the same time, the majority of the pushback is coming from the libs who, unfortunately, to get past the filibuster, we need at least a couple of them to come over in the Senate to, again, do the fundamental easy thing, which is have people show IDs to prove they can vote. I, unlike our friends on the lefty side of aisle, think that black people are just as smart as everybody else. Think that minorities are just as smart as everybody else. I believe with my whole heart that even though the libs think those minorities are so dumb they can't have an ID on them, I believe otherwise. Call me optimistic. I guess maybe I'm just I'm too optimistic about this. I think too highly of these dumb minorities who can't get an ID to vote. But that's just the way I feel. That's what I believe in my heart. Unfortunately, the libs don't agree. We got a lot to get to here on Turning Point tonight. We've got Kamala Harris is back in the game, baby. I could not be more excited. Kamala Harris, Election HQ, she's ready to go. And I, for one, could not be more excited. Governor Newsom is doubling down on his ridiculous high-speed rail. The Italians, and I'm talking about literal Italians in Italy, are very, very upset about American domestic policy in regards to kicking illegals out of the country, which I couldn't imagine as to why they care about that, but that's just the case. Also, big things from Turning Point USA, specifically today in the state of Montana, or yesterday, we'll talk about it today. TPT@TPUSA.com is the email address if you'd like to send along an email, as well as leave a comment wherever it is that you happen to be watching this. Feel free to do so, and if that comment is just nasty and disgusting, it'll fit in with the tenor of this show, and we could read it on our mailbag segment of the show. TPT@TPUSA.com. I'd love to see any of your emails. Let us know, do you think minorities are too stupid to get an ID? It doesn't even dawn on me. I happen to have an ID. I take offense to Senator Schumer thinking that I'm too stupid to get an ID. I'm mad about that. And doesn't even factor into my analysis here, but TPT@TPUSA.com. Let us know what you think. We will be right back after the break. Don't go away.
Welcome to Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with your Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Did you ever wonder what truly happened in the COVID-19 pandemic and whether Anthony Fauci would ever be held accountable? I think we all have. Filmmaker Jenner First has an upcoming documentary that searches for truth, transparency, and accountability called Thank You, Dr. Fauci.
Governments lie.
Anthony Fauci put everyone on the planet at risk without their consent.
It's beyond suspicious.
Research caused a pandemic, killed 20 million, and cost $25 trillion. Fauci would prefer a lie.
Public trust, national health, and global security are at stake as this documentary digs through thousands of pages of documents and interviews with former officials and whistleblowers in the most controversial narrative of our time that may also be one of the largest cover-ups in modern public health history.
It was the cover-up.
Why would he trade the Chinese the most advanced biotechnology in the world?
He's a spy. It's insane.
I don't think this is going to be foolproof. Things are going to slip through. Fauci knew and lied repeatedly.
Rather than being a partisan hit piece, Thank You, Dr. Fauci is an honest look at the origins of COVID-19 and a potential bioarms race with China. It streams exclusively on Angel Studios app and site starting on October 23rd. And all you need to do is go to angel.com/Rav to stream it. So be ready to watch, question, and share as the quest for truth and accountability continues.
Independent. Stop covering for the president. Stop being his flunky.
And gentlemen,
he's talking to me. I'm responding back to him.
2006 trip to Venezuela.
Stop covering for the president. Don't be a flunky. Work for the American people.
Mr. Meeks, trip to Venezuela.
Work for the American people. Don't be a cover-up for a mob.
Maybe you're going to see your friend Nicholas Maduro in Brooklyn
is not recognized.
It just goes to show you, really anybody can make it in Congress. Unfortunately, I wish, the 435 members of Congress, I have to believe a higher percentage than I think a lot of us would be comfortable with are not very smart. I believe that is Congressman Greg Meeks, who is yelling at Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, don't be a flunky. I think he's running out of words there. Not entirely sure the vocabulary's all there. Also, too, okay, just really quick, I've never understood this. This is an argument that the left uses more when President Trump kind of comes into power. They did this in 2016. They did it, obviously, in 2025 when he became the president for the second term. The argument that they used to stop or argue against people that President Trump would appoint is they're a Trump loyalist. Okay, is that that's really not the argument that you think it is. Oh, here's a Trump loyalist. Was he going to hire not a loyalist? Let me give me an example of when President Biden or President Obama or Clinton or any of the other libs hired non-loyalists for roles. And by loyalist, I mean people aligned with them. Yeah, President Biden was known for appointing a bunch of conservatives across his entire administration. No, that doesn't happen. Stop doing the work of the guy that hired you, who's doing the work of the American people. All right. Thank you for your argument. Anger is not an argument. Let's see. Speaking of people who don't necessarily have all of the words at the ready a lot of the time, Kamala Harris is back in the game. Yesterday, she was teasing teasing an announcement. The Kamala Harris HQ, the Kamala Campaign HQ X account, posted a video basically teasing there's a big announcement coming tomorrow. And I don't need to describe the video to you. It doesn't make any sense. But today, that big announcement is made. And to the joyful hearts of all of us, Kamala Harris is back in the game. And I say that mostly sarcastically, but also a little bit seriously. I've mentioned several times, I was at an event with Don Jr. In Houston, in which he gave his full-throated endorsement to Kamala Harris to win the nomination for the libs in the most upcoming presidential race. And I believe he did that, and I agree with him, because her, like Governor Newsom, would lose 45 states. Easily. Now, Kamala Harris might lose even more states than Governor Newsom, which is probably the reason why she decided she's not going to run for governor. Anyways, all that being said, the announcement was made today. Here it is. Here is the learned, eloquent, thoughtful vice president, former vice president of the United States, big announcement on her X account, Cut 10.
Madam Vice President, what's going on with Kamala HQ?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I have good news. So Kamala HQ is turning into headquarters, and it's where you can go online to get basically the latest of what's going on, and also to meet and revisit with some of our great, courageous leaders, be they elected leaders, community leaders, civic leaders, faith leaders, young leaders. I'm really excited about it. So stay engaged, and I'll see you out there. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, Kamala, get in all of the races. Get in the California governor's race. If California has any shot of electing a conservative, a lot of it's going to have to do with Kamala Harris getting in and making sure that the libs can lose for the first time since 2006 in a statewide election in California. Please keep going. There's so many things to get to here, and we don't need to talk about a ton of it. I know this is not necessarily news breaking, but it really goes to show you how out of touch people like Kamala Harris are with the public, with the media, with engagement and how it works. She's effectively turning her campaign X account, her campaign social medias into the headquarters where young people can engage. You want to know how young people won't engage? It's a bunch of old people like Kamala saying, "Hey, golly gee willikers, folks, here's where you can engage." That's just not how the internet works. It's not how social media works. She's effectively trying to set up her social media accounts as a platform where people can engage with elected leaders and leaders of the lefty side of the political aisle. Newsflash, they just do that themselves. Honestly, it's been kind of a problem for libs to kind of wrangle their people in. I think AOC, who's a Instagram influencer who also for some reason has a vote in Congress, she just goes direct to consumer. You don't need this like third party platform that for some reason is going to be promoted by Kamala Harris to get in touch with your voters. You know, I could say I don't actually know what she's doing, but I do think I do know what she's doing. What she's doing is throwing this out as a trial run to see how much engagement she can get and gain some leverage with her lib friends to think, you know what? I know she can't really string a coherent sentence together. I know that somehow over the course of 4 years, she completely missed the fact that her boss was mentally compromised, and that's putting it very, very nicely. I know that we raised literally $1 billion and she lost in a blaze of glory, not even winning a single swing state. But you know what? She's got the young people on this platform that young people don't use. Therefore, we should give her another shot. And to our lib friends, I say, do it. Please, please do it. I think we're going to spend a considerable amount of time, not today necessarily, but in the near future, kind of highlighting some of the steps or missteps from some of the bigger libs in the political realm. The political arena is ripe for the picking in the lib context, and I think it deserves some scrutiny from us. And Kamala Harris, fortunately for us, doesn't need a ton of scrutiny for the majority of people in the majority of the country to go, "Oh, yeah, she's an idiot." Now, that being said, as I mentioned, she said that she's not done with public service, where she gets rich enough to afford an $8 million house on the coast of California, but that's a different conversation for a different time. She's not done with public service, but she has said she's not running for Governor Newsom's job. I think there's a hairspray requirement. I'm not sure if that's what it is, but I don't know that she's met that hairspray requirement. But she's not running for the governorship of the state of California. However, the governor of the state of California is clearly running for president of the United States. Now, yesterday we did a big whole long thing of how the libs even think, yeah, there's some problems here that you have to deal with. Fortunately for us, the governor of the poopiest state in the country is doubling down on the things that even his own party thinks is a terrible idea. Specifically in this case, the train to nowhere. If you're not familiar with this, I'm not entirely sure how you've gotten this far in political media and not understood the debacle that is the California high-speed rail. But just to catch folks up very, very quickly, California voters approved in November of 2008 $10 billion, or $33 billion in a total budget, $10 billion in bonds for a high-speed rail that was going to connect Los Angeles to San Francisco Services were going to start in 2020. It's now 2026. The length of the track has gotten substantially shorter. It's going to Bakersfield and Merced, but the governor himself will tell us that in just a quick second when we play a clip from him. The cost has skyrocketed. Hundreds of billions of dollars is expected to be spent, and the rail has yet to lay a single piece of usable track. And if you were running for president, you would think that Governor Hairspray would try and distance himself from that. Hey, this has become a disaster in so many different ways. I think pretty much everybody realizes that this is some sort of like a union mob grab to try and maintain the vote of the Caltrans workers. I'm going to go ahead and remove myself. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to do any press for it. It's a bad idea, and we should have scrapped it a long time ago. The governor himself in about 2018 said, yeah, this is not going to work. It's not going to be done by its deadline, so we probably shouldn't do it anymore. And yet, despite his own best interest, that's not what he did. He, in fact, has doubled down. Here's the governor of the poopiest state in the union talking yesterday at a press conference where he, like I said, doubles down on one of the worst financial debacles, not only in California history, but in the history of the country more broadly as a whole. Cut 11.
And when this thing is moving and it's happening and you're not taking off your damn shoes and you're not having to show your real ID and you're just hopping on, 119 miles and we get to the 171, that's Merced to Bakersfield, two of the most dynamic and spectacular cities in our state. And then we extend further south, further north, and then further west. 463 miles ready for construction, 100% environmentally cleared, as Toke said, out of 494. We're there. We're on the other side of the hardest part of this project.
There's a lot to get to there, so I'll try to make it brief. First things first, he's saying, well, people who travel the state need to use airlines, and we all hate going through TSA. I, for one, as a consumer who does have to go through TSA, would honestly like more security on the train, because the cheaper the thing is to use, the more likely it is that you get stabbed by a crazed militant meth head. So I don't actually agree with the governor here, believe it or not. I think there should be more security on the train that isn't done and yet has cost people billions of dollars in the state of California. He does mention the two cities that it's going to, Bakersfield and Merced. Given that Bakersfield and Merced have a combined population of about 500,000, if you factor that into the overall cost of the train itself, that effectively costs $22,000 per person to connect each other to the cities that they probably won't go to very frequently. If you're not from California and you've never heard of Bakersfield or Merced, you can trust me in saying that a lot of people in California don't even know where Bakersfield and Merced is. So that it kind of goes to show the point of why exactly are we building this enormously expensive thing? But I think the main thing that I'd like to hit on is the very thing that he closed out with. He said the hardest part is finished. And that actually goes beyond what's going on in California and to the overall broader idea of leftism in the country, which is evidenced by the question, why is the bureaucracy the hardest part? Why is it that when you're building a physical railway, the most difficult part that has taken 20 years to get to is cutting through the bureaucracy? Isn't that the best argument for why bureaucracy should not be the standard across the country? Isn't that a great argument for why red tape hinders projects as opposed to promotes them? Why is it that building $100 billion thing takes 20 years to get through the red tape? I think that principle should apply pretty much everywhere in the country. That is, I think, what people who aren't in California, who aren't footing the bill for this, should take away with this. Libs think that that's normal. Libs think that it's normal for bureaucracy to slow things down by 20 or 30 years and cost hundreds of billions of dollars. That's the difference between us and them. That's one of the many differences between us and them. Ultimately, I think it was summed up best by this tweet. For $10 billion, Elon Musk put 300 rockets into orbit in space. For $11 billion, the The state of California has built 1,600 feet of elevated rail with no rail. The private sector versus the bureaucratic government sector at work. Got a lot to get to coming up here still. The Olympics. There are protests in the Olympics, and you're gonna laugh with me when you find out what the protests are over. It's quite funny. What the mayor of the Olympic hosting city has said is even more funny. And I guess the punchline is what DHS is saying, but it's really not a punchline. It's more of like a concern of the health of humanity, of like why they even had to issue this statement. But all of that will be covered coming up after the break. TPT at TPUSA.com. If you'd like to be included in our mailbag segment, leave a comment wherever it is that you happen to be watching. Go follow us on all the social media accounts. The hack is just type JOBOB pretty much anywhere you'll be able to find all of the exclusive online content that we put out. We will be right back after the break. Don't go away.
Exactly what they're doing. They want to steal the election. We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, and we're going to the Capitol. They need to take back our country.
Events in Washington have taken a violent and tumultuous turn.
January 6th wasn't just a moment in history. For thousands of Americans, it was the moment their voices were taken.
It's insurrection.
They were persecuted, hunted.
Seditious conspiracy.
But behind prison walls, something unexpected happened. They found their voice again.
Started singing the national anthem.
We took it up to him at Mar-a-Lago. He goes, I'll put my voice on it.
Our supporters made this go platinum.
Real America's Voice is telling the real story of January 6th like you've never seen it before.
Everybody, this must be peaceful.
This is not the story you were shown.
I take responsibility.
This is the story they live.
Government entrapment scheme that this actually was.
The J6 Patriots are no longer staying silent. They are speaking, they are standing, and they are telling the truth.
You can't kill us. You can't beat us.
Scan the QR code or visit RealAmericasVoice.com. Real America's Voice presents The Sleeping Giant. Available now. Real America's Voice is growing, and now it's all in one place. Introducing the new and improved RAV app, built for access, community, and choice, not paywalls. Here's the key. RAV is still free to watch. No sign-in, no membership required. Your favorite live streams, breaking coverage, and video on demand are all right there. Free, just like always.
For the War Room Posse, we have to be a force multiplier on this. We have to stick the landing.
In the White House, in the Oval Office, you're crushing it, my friend.
And if you want more, the members section is your backstage pass. Get exclusive behind-the-scenes photos and videos, insider moments from the studio and the field, and early access to new content before it goes public. Members can also unlock special experiences like virtual meet and greets, member-only auctions, and select event access, plus commercial-free viewing of certain shows inside the app. It's not just an app, it's a community. Download the RAV app today. Find it in the App Store and Google Play.
I am personally offended by what was presented on so many different levels. One thing I would like to see updated is the word homeless to unhoused. I'm not done.
Can I just don't want Mr. Berman for this to be on him. That's the way our state of California, that's the language that they use, and that's their
That doesn't mean that's the language we have to use. I'm
those are
just
their
making
tiles.
a statement, and
I
I'd
know.
like
I
to
just
have
want
my
to make
time.
sure.
I had a stand-up bit about this. This is some either school board or city council person talking about they're not called homeless people. They are called unhoused people. I had a stand-up bit for a long time that was like, I was telling my neighbor, hey, there's a homeless person. They're called unhoused people. Okay, fine. There's an unhoused person taking a dump in your mailbox. What are the semantics for? Honestly, like, do we not all know what homeless people are? Especially in the state of California, homeless people are not people that have fallen on hard times. No, 99.9% of them are bums and junkies who've ruined their brain on drugs. And changing the language doesn't change that fact. But of course, that's California trying to play argumentative semantic games in which there's no point, because it's just stupid internet fodder for their own hyper lefty side. Speaking of hyper lefties, the Olympics is starting Friday, actually tomorrow. The opening ceremony of what is likely to be, I think, less gay than the opening ceremonies of the French Olympics or the Paris Olympics. We all remember the craziness going on there. I don't need to show you a second time. But I would assume, maybe this is not a good assumption. Let us know, tpt@tpusa.com. What is your assumption on the opening ceremony in Italy? You know, with Giorgia Meloni, with kind of the trend in Italy versus France. I know we talked about France yesterday, and they're kind of hopefully going to right the ship a little bit. Maybe, we'll see. But just given the cultural differences, I would assume the opening ceremony in Italy is going to be less gay. I don't know. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. But unfortunately, there's still a monumental amount of gay in the part of the people protesting the anti-ICE. I wish I were kidding. They are protesting in Italy against United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I wish I were kidding. Now, I guess the more sane part, but still insane part, is that the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic team have officially renamed the Hospitality Suite in response to anti-ICE protests in Milan. There's no longer going to be called the Ice House. It'll be called the Winter House. Now, I'm not entirely sure if our own Olympic officials know that immigration's customs enforcement is different than frozen water. Not entirely sure, but for some reason they felt the need, well, we have to change the name from the Ice House to the Winter House. Mostly because the people that are on the side of the radical left don't know the difference between immigration enforcement and water below 32 degrees. In a joint statement, the U.S. figure skating, U.S. hockey, U.S. speed skating explained the change of the purpose of the venue. Our hospitality concept was designed to provide a private space free of distractions where athletes, families, and friends can come together to experience the unique experience of the Winter Games. Okay. In addition to that, in a second, I'm going to pull up what the U.S. Department of Homeland Security said. But before that, I want to talk about the protests going on. You saw some graphics of the protests going on. In addition to that, there's a CBS News quote talking about a quote from the mayor of Milan, Giuseppe Sala. Can't think of a more Italian name than that. Speaking out a couple weeks back that says ICE is not welcome in Italy. That this militia is a militia that kills, said Sala in an interview with Italian media. It's a militia that enters people's homes by signing permits for themselves. It's clear that they are not welcome in Milan. Now, why is all of this commotion going on? Well, because DHS gracefully, the United States, the taxpayer, by the way, allowed our officials, our federal agents, to go to Italy to help them provide safety for the Olympics. I think that is a noble thing, but that caused protests. That caused our own Olympic committee to change it from the Ice House to the Winter House. That caused the mayor of the city to say, your federal beggars can't be choosers in this situation. Your federal agents aren't welcome here if they are in the Ice the ICE, in the ICE agency. If they're in the ICE agency, they're not, we want your security. We need your help desperately to keep these events secure, but not these guys. To which our U.S. Department of Homeland Security had to issue this statement. This is graphic 1. In response to all of that insanity, ICE, for some crazy reason, Homeland Security had to issue the statement. Obviously, ICE does not conduct immigration enforcement operations in foreign countries. At the Olympics, ICE's Homeland Security investigation is supporting the U.S. Department of State's Diplomatic Secret Service and hosting the nations to vet and mitigate risks from transnational criminal organizations. All security operations will remain under Italian authority. Now, I guess good that they cleared that up, but also why did we have to? I don't understand. It's one of those things where like you kind of have to read it in a sarcastic tone. Look, yeah, obviously, ICE isn't conducting immigration operations in foreign nations. Maybe they should. If there are, for some reason, illegals as a part of the American Olympic team, maybe ICE should be like, yeah, you got to stay here. You can't. You got to stay here. But the fact that DHS had to even put out that statement goes to show you how ridiculous and nonsensical too much of humanity is right now. Got more to get to today. Big announcement from Turning Point USA. Super excited to talk about that. We'll get to that in our next segment. Also, the Trump administration making it easier to fire senior level government bureaucrats. Actually, not sure if we're going to get to that in its entirety, but know that that's happening. TPT at TPUSA.com if you have any thoughts, comments, concerns on whether or not ICE should deport by just having them stay there, illegals in Italy. So I don't know. TPT at TPUSA.com if you'd like to participate in that conversation. We'll be right back after the break. Don't go away.
Exactly what they're doing. They want to steal the election. We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, and we're going to the Capitol. They need to take back our country.
Events in Washington have taken a violent and tumultuous turn.
January 6th wasn't just a moment in history. For thousands of Americans, it was the moment their voices were taken.
It's insurrection.
They were persecuted, hunted.
Seditious conspiracy.
But behind prison walls, something unexpected happened. They found their voice again.
Started singing the national anthem.
We took it up to him at Mar-a-Lago. He goes, I'll put my voice on it.
Our supporters made this go platinum.
Real America's Voice is telling the real story of January 6th like you've never seen it before.
Everybody, this must be peaceful.
This is not the story you were shown.
I take responsibility.
This is the story they live.
Government entrapment scheme that this actually was.
The J6 Patriots are no longer staying silent. They are speaking, they are standing, and they are telling the truth.
You can't kill us. You can't beat us.
Scan the QR code or visit RealAmericasVoice.com. Real America's Voice presents The Sleeping Giant. Available now. Real America's Voice is growing, and now it's all in one place. Introducing the new and improved RAV app, built for access, community, and choice, not paywalls. Here's the key. RAV is still free to watch. No sign-in, no membership required. Your favorite live streams, breaking coverage, and video on demand are all right there. Free, just like always.
For the War Room Posse, we have to be a force multiplier on this. We have to stick the landing.
In the White House, in the Oval Office,
If Jesus were here today, he would be a clinic escort, distracting women from the hatred of the protesters. or an abortion doula holding women's hands and offering support and love as they end their pregnancies. If Jesus were giving his sermon today, he might also have said, "Blessed are those who end pregnancies, for they will be known for their loving kindness."
I don't even know what I should say about that. Who let that lady talk? Okay. Do you even really need to argue with this? Like, how much of an argument do you want me to put together with this? Like, the Sermon on the Mount, yes, a lot of it is inverted. I don't think Jesus would have said, "Blessed are the murderers, for they keep the peace." Just a thought. I just don't think that that's kind of what would be in Jesus's heart. Jeez, holy cow. I lost my train of thought. I don't even know where. Let's talk about some good news outside of that absurd, abhorrent mischaracterization. I don't even call it mischaracterization. You're just making stuff up at that point. Some good news. Yesterday, the state of Montana has partnered with Turning Point USA. I think this is the 4th state. Actually, it could be even more than that. But states around the country are saying, hey, Club America needs to happen. I think this is coming out of the idea that high school students, in too many cases, have no idea what this country is. They have no idea the values that we've been built on. They have no idea what freedom even means, what the country was set up to do, the values and the core tenets of this country. They don't even know what that is. So Club America, thankfully, powered by TPUSA, is going into high schools and providing so many different resources and chapters and meetings and saying, hey, this is why the country was founded. This is why it's important. Here's what happens if you don't follow the culture and society that this country has set up. Massive win for Club America. Here's the governor of Montana, Greg Gianforte, talking about the partnership that the state of Montana is building with Turning Point USA. This is cut 12.
We stand here in support of all of you across Montana that are advancing freedom and American values. Charlie had a passion for working with young people, and in Montana, we've seen incredible growth of Turning Point chapters on our high school and college campuses. We want to encourage more students to start these chapters. In Montana, we have about 200 high schools. We'd like to see a Club America chapter in every single one of them.
You know, Charlie's a big believer in if you can change the culture in their understanding of what this country was, it's so much easier to influence elections effectively. Not influence elections in the way of like campaigning and sloganeering and all of that, but if people have in their core the belief as to why the country is what it is, elections are easy. Running campaigns is easy. I would much rather have a super hardcore conservative versus like a squishy conservative in a race than a squishy conservative and a major lib. That's just better for the country as a whole. And that's why Charlie was so focused on college campuses and on high school campuses. I will say though, jokingly, this is one of the areas where we won't be able to get to Charlie's goal. He wanted Club America to have 30,000 chapters on 30,000 high schools in the country. Unfortunately, there are only 27,000 high schools in this country, so it's going to be a little bit difficult to get to 30,000 unless there's 4,000 high school campuses in Canada. If we take Canada over and make it our 51st state, we can reach the goal of 30,000 Club America campuses. Bottom line, fantastic news. Thank you, Governor Gianforte. Really appreciate the partnership with Turning Point USA. We'll get to our mailbag segment, tbt@tpusa.com, coming up right after the break. Don't go away.
radical left knows exactly what they're doing. They want to steal the election. We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, and we're going to the Capitol. They need to take back our country.
Events in Washington have taken a violent and tumultuous turn.
January 6th wasn't just a moment in history. For thousands of Americans, it was the moment their voices were taken.
It's insurrection.
They were persecuted, hunted,
Seditious conspiracy.
but behind prison walls, something unexpected happened. They found their voice again.
Started singing the national anthem.
We took it up to him at Mar-a-Lago. He goes, I'll put my voice on it.
Our supporters made this go platinum.
Real America's Voice is telling the real story of January 6th like you've never seen it before.
Everybody, this must be peaceful.
This is not the story you were shown.
I take responsibility.
This is the story they live.
Government entrapment scheme that this actually was.
The J6 Patriots are no longer staying silent. They are speaking, they are standing, and they are telling the truth.
You can't kill us. You can't beat us.
Scan the QR code or visit RealAmericasVoice.com. Real America's Voice presents The Sleeping Giant. Available now. Real America's Voice is growing, and now it's all in one place. Introducing the new and improved RAV app, built for access, community, and choice, not paywalls. Here's the key. RAV is still free to watch. No sign-in, no membership required. Your favorite live streams, breaking coverage, and video on demand are all right there. Free, just like always.
For the War Room Posse, we have to be a force multiplier on this. We have to stick the landing.
In the White House, in the Oval Office, you're
These women tricked us. They did. They outsmarted us. And the messed up part about it is they use frat boy psychology to outsmart us. For hundreds of years, I heard women complain about toxic masculinity. How men, we was keeping them oppressed. We was keeping them held down. We had to do better and listen to them. And then my generation came around and we was like, guys, maybe we should listen to women. And then women were like, what are you, gay? Make a decision. Be a man.
Feminism. Anyways, get to our mailbag segment, tpt@tpusa.com if you'd like to be included in that mailbag segment or have a chance to get included. Scott, a frequent correspondent, says this: if Bad Bunny is so into the culture of Puerto Rico, why does he have an English stage name? That's good question. Cultural appropriation, maybe? Bad Bunny? I don't even know what that would be in Spanish. I should have translated that beforehand. Well, how do you say bunny? Is bunny different than rabbit in Spanish? Let us know, tpt@tpusa.com. On the topic of the SNAP benefits, we did a big segment yesterday, as well as played some videos. She's specifically replying to the lady that was like, I only get I'm an able-bodied woman with no kids, and I only get $250 in SNAP benefits. Why exactly do you get that? Donna says, I want to know how that woman got $250 in SNAP benefits. She says, I'm physically disabled, still works 5 hours per week and get $24 in SNAP benefits. She can cry me a river. Absolutely. Don, on the topic of the SNAP benefits, said, if we ain't careful, we'll get all these freeloaders healthy enough to go to work. Yeah, that would be disastrous for the freeloaders, unfortunately. Let's see. On the topic of Make America California again. I guess that's a slogan that libs are trying to use. Of course, libs will vote for Governor Newsom. They are the Borg Hive mentality. They will do whatever they are told. Accurate. You know what? This last one, as we wrap up, I have a couple seconds left. Let me just pose this question. tpt@tpusa.com. I'd love your thoughts on this. Edward talking about, I'll condense it here. Edward talking about Homan's reductions in the presence at Minneapolis. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do we think about that? Homan saying, hey, we're going to remove some federal agents from that. Personally, my first initial thought when I read that is, hey, as long as the deportation numbers are still up, I don't care if you move people around, shift things over or whatever. I don't necessarily think that is a lib win as the libs think it is. And even some of you might think it is, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. TBT@TPUSA.com. Do you think that this is a lib win, or do you kind of like, yeah, it doesn't matter to me. Just make sure the deportation